All right. I don't know. There it goes. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lauren Snyder, president of this club. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this celebration of service, our weekly celebration of service. I want to thank Winston for welcoming us and greeting us on their way in. Thank you, Winston. And also Sarah Laughlin for capturing our meeting in the roundabout report. So thank you to Winston and Sarah. Our pledge and reflection is by Ms. Martha Wales. Martha? All right.
The flag is over there.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sit down. Close to it. Can you hear me now? I guess so. I had several ideas for what I might talk about as a reflection, but given the events of last week, I decided I would like to read the two quotations that are on my refrigerator, along with pictures of my grandchildren, my grocery shopping list, and the magnet from the city that tells us when our trash and recycling is going to be picked up. The first is from Philippians, New Testament. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, think on these things. And the second comes from the Talmud and was quoted by Tim Jessen in one of his Herald Times articles. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Have mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. It's two challenges.
Thank you very much, Martha. Now I want to call up Marilyn Wood to introduce our guests. Marilyn?
And today we would like to welcome two guests to our meeting. If you would stand and be recognized when I call your name. Al Feidel, guest of Liz Feidel. And Sandra McGow, guest of Julia Merck. So we welcome you here today to Rotary, and we would be more than pleased to talk with you more about what Rotary is and how you might be involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Marilyn. All right, quick Rotary family update here. Kate provided me with an update on Charlotte. Her therapy on her elbow is going well, but she's limited on mobility due to needing, if you need a walker, the elbow is pretty important in that. So going well. She really appreciates having visitors, so if anybody's able to get out there, and Kate referenced all of her different visitors come from different backgrounds and different perspectives, which that sounds very appropriate for Charlotte and all of the different interests she has. So good update there. Also wanted to extend a congratulations to fellow Rotarian Glenn Steenberger. I don't know if Glenn's here, but he's been in the news a lot lately. But he is the CEO of the Hoosier Hills Trails Boy Scouts Council, and his team landed a $1 million FEMA grant to add amenities, including a tornado shelter, to the Maumee Scout Reservation, which is south of Lake Monroe. So round of applause and congratulations to Glenn. A few quick birthdays. We have Dick Rose on the 19th today. Is that right? Yeah. Happy birthday, Dick. And then Monica Kroner on the 20th. So happy birthday to Dick and Monica. Membership anniversaries. We have Jeff Baldwin, 5 years. Shelley Yoder and Tim Jessen celebrating 6 years. And Steve Moberly celebrating 12 years. So congratulations to the four of you. A few pre-program announcements. I want to invite Winston up. He's got a couple flags from some clubs that he visited recently that wants to just make a few comments about.
I had the pleasure of visiting a couple of Rotaries, and the first one is in Roatan, the Bay Islands off of Honduras. It's a club of about 20 people, and you'll be glad to know over half are women. And they were just getting ready to attend their district convention, which was going to be in Guatemala. If you haven't been to Roatan, beautiful diving, snorkeling. It's part of that Great Barrier Reef that's second in the world only to the one off of Australia. And then the second one, I found out, I did not know, that my uncle is a member of the Rotary Club of Western Forsyth County in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So I was there over the weekend and visiting my aunt and uncle, and they wish us the best, and I share it with you.
Thank you very much, Winston. I think that highlights, and I'll blame or bring myself to light here, I don't do a good enough job of when I'm visiting different locations of, you can load up on the app or look online, you can pull up a club very quickly, and they're, as we all know, they're darn near everywhere, and making those connections with fellow Rotarians around the world is one of the beauties of being a member of this wonderful international organization. So thank you very much, Winston. Now, once again, the district grant. Ann Connors, you want to sprint up here? Real quickly on our district grant. Hard to think we're planning district grant 2019-2020. So, Ann.
Thank you. On your tables, there are a couple things. Natalie's going to email this to everybody, and you're welcome to share it. We're getting ready, the Community Services Committee, to meet April 9th, and we'll review applications for the district grants. If you remember, last year we gave $7,340 to Amethyst House here in town, in the Women's House, and we had a painting volunteer activity, and they bought the computer and tablets to help with their treatment facility and things like that. So this is information about the grant, and we need applicants really soon by April 2nd. And the other page, these are the organizations that applied last year, just to give you an idea. And one thing I like to point out is, when you get this, their primary focus areas for Rotary International that the Community Services Committee also focuses on, and they're on the application form. So if you're affiliated with any nonprofit, we welcome you to apply, and it's good money. It's only a one-page application. It's easy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Ann. The good work in the community continues with the help of the district grant. It Takes a Village. The Child and Maternal Resource Fair is once again May 18th. The Lunch Buddies, third quarter, that's dwindling down. Your opportunity to do that. Bob Zaltzberg and I just scheduled ours for later this week. March service opportunity. Sarah stepped up with Teachers Warehouse. Our service opportunity for March is Saturday, March 30th at 9:30 to 12:30 at Teachers Warehouse. They just need some additional volunteers for, is that the 5th Saturday that'll be of that month. So if you have any questions or would like to volunteer, reach out to Sarah. She'll keep track of who volunteers, how many hours, and get that to me so I can log it for our club. The Myanmar Water Project, we want to get that funded, as the check has been sent over to fund that project this year with JT Waring and his group. And then finally, I want to thank Sarah, I want to thank Ashley, and I want to thank Aaron, and maybe some others I don't recall, but who represented our club at the President-elect training over in Effingham, Illinois over the weekend. Social media told me they had a pretty good time while they were over there. So thank you for being there. I know it's always a great time. I've been a few times myself. So thank you, Sarah, Aaron, and Ashley, and others. Now, Susie, are you here? I believe I thought I saw you come in. Happy dollars? Who's got one? All right, Glenda's got one. And Owen's got one right here.
Okay, I'm going to give you a high five because I have three things. One, a former member of this club, Kate Lee, just reported on Facebook this morning that she has received a Fulbright to go to Korea in the coming year. I don't know the details, but she's doing that. Second thing, I'm delighted that the IU women's basketball team made it to the NCAA tournament. And third, it's a little bit complicated. My first wife, the mother of our daughters, was rushed to the hospital on Friday, and it turned out she had almost a total blockage in her heart They were able to put in a pacemaker, and she went home the next day and is now recuperating.
Tomorrow is my mother-in-law's 103rd birthday. So she decreed there would be no big celebration, so we're having a small party. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations. Jean, yeah.
I was very fortunate to go to Paducah, Kentucky, been in Kentucky this weekend and spend it with my daughter. Her husband was having his last hurrah as he's not a daddy with his guy friends in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we had a great time. And my little grandson Hayes is growing beautifully.
Nobody's excited, right? Yeah, Judy. Do I see another hand? Yeah, Judy.
Well, I'm particularly proud of this club for choosing Myanmar as the water project. And the reason being, when I was district governor, that was also our district project, and I worked with J.P. Boring on that one too. And what you may not know is the presidents of this club, past presidents of this club, all collected money and did a well in my honor, and I am so very grateful for that. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
I'm happy because I finally got to go to a place I've been dreaming about since the early 1990s, Costa Rica. In the early 1990s, I was working for the Nature Conservancy in Washington, D.C. with the international program, and they were doing a lot of conservation work in Costa Rica. And I saw all those slides, heard about all those cool animals and plants, and dreamed about it, and finally fulfilled that dream.
Anybody else? All right. As always, thank you guys for sharing what's going on in your life. Happy events. So thank you all. Now, with no further ado, I want to invite up our very own Tim Jessen. We all know him, but he can tell us more about himself as well as his trip to Cuba with the church. Tim.
Thank you very much, Lauren and Rotarian. Since you're talking about Honduras and Costa Rica, I want to put in a plug. You need to all go to Cuba. That's where we went, my wife and I, who's here, Elma. She'll hear a little bit from her later. And we had 15 people that went. 10 were women, 5 were men. We only have 1 woman and 3 of the men here with us, but you'll see the pictures of our group. And Cuba is a wonderful place to visit. And they have some wonderful resorts, but also get off the beaten path and meet some of the wonderful people. I am going to introduce now Joe Lee, who is going to be the main speaker. Some others will come up and talk about these slides. If you don't know Joe, Joe is the cartoonist for the Herald Times on Saturday. So I don't see Bob Salzberg here, but if he were here, I would say you can look at Joe's cartoon on Saturday, and where he afflicts the comfortable. Then you can look at my column where I try to comfort the afflicted. Joe, you're on for Cuba, and take the mic here.
Okay.
Jim Watson is also speaking, and Bob Bernanke is our guest. He's our tech man. He didn't go on the trip, but he's helped us out.
He's seen the slides enough, so it's like going there. Well, one thing I would like to start with is why Cuba? Several years ago, we were thinking of doing some sort of a service opportunity and looking at Central America. Our Minister of Outreach at that time was a fellow named Mark Knowles, who had a career in the Peace Corps. He had been in Central America and also been a trainer. And so when talking with Mark, we thought, well, why not Cuba? Cuba had just recently opened up slightly under the Obama administration, and so Americans no longer had to go to Canada or Mexico or somewhere else from here to get there. So you were able to actually go from the United States to Cuba. And that changed everything. In fact, while we were making the plans with Global Ministries, which is part of it's an organization that is part of the Disciples of Christ as well as the United Church of Christ. And they set up all kinds of activities. But we were actually finally able to get reservations on regular airlines instead of a charter aircraft to get to Cuba. And that was 2 years ago. And it was an incredible, eye-opening trip. And we decided to do it again, but this time, that first time was truly the people-to-people visa that one still acquires to get to Cuba. And we met everybody from the recently retired former Minister of Education for the Cuban government to Mariela Castro, who is Raul Castro's daughter, and she was the head of the sexual research organization, part of the Cuban government, which was trying to open up rights for LGBTQ Cubans, and did an enormous amount for that. She actually kissed me on the cheek, so I was one kiss away from Fidel. And while we were there, Fidel actually died. So we decided we would go back with a real service opportunity. And my wife, who was a long-time art teacher, she, in talking with the education minister, discovered that they have very, very few funds to go toward art education. So we decided to couple with the Martin Luther King Center in Havana, where we had stayed the first time, most of our stay, to actually set up art classes. And the classes would be for a group called the Psycho Dancers, which has nothing to do with their mental state, but actually it's a kind of a psychological dance. It's for senior citizens to keep them active and moving and in good spirits, and also with the some of the young members of the Next Door Baptist Church. So let's start with the big show. Oh, so there's Martin Luther King. You'll recognize him. This is in the courtyard of the Martin Luther King Center, and it is just beyond those doors is the cafeteria, and that's the group that we went with. So there we all are, and the gentleman in front with the two beautiful daughters is Sandor Alvarez, who was our guide on both trips and has become a great friend of all of us. And the small gentleman, who's actually even smaller than me in this, and older than I think any of us, is Raul Suarez, who is the founder of the Martin Luther King Center. And he was inspired by Martin Luther King's quest for social justice. And he founded the center 30 or 40 years ago. And they are involved in all kinds of social justice activities within Cuba. There he is. And actually, you can see I tower over him. And I'm happy to be with him. I'm not so sure Raul was that excited for me to interrupt his lunch. But he is a wonderful, inspirational man. And this is actually, the Presbyterian Church runs a water project in Cuba where they purify water. So in different localities throughout Cuba, they have these set up with the pure water. People from all the neighborhoods around about come in all day to get jugs of pure water. And here's another view of the courtyard, and you can start to see that one thing that Cuba truly needs is funds for infrastructure. It is a beautiful, beautiful place. It must have been incredible in the 40s and 50s, and just like the cars not much has been done since then. It's a true work of sustainability that almost any of the buildings are standing. This was one of our art projects, and this boy painted this, and it's Americano y Cubanos Viva. And he was, on his own, was giving that charge to Cubans and to us from the United States, that we live together and hooray for us. And in one thing that was incredibly interesting, and this was on both trips, but especially this trip, that Cubans would ask where we were from, immediately thinking that we probably were Canadian. When we told them we were actually from the United States, the joy of having people from the United States visit them was overwhelming. They want connections with the United States. As our translator, and we'll see a picture of him later, said that, the United States has this incredible relationship with Vietnam now, where tens of thousands of Americans died in that war, but we have a friendly relationship. They could not understand why not Cuba. And here we are gathered with another group. These are some of the older Cubans that we met with. And there we are in the courtyard again. And here you can see that sometimes there were indeed size differences. That's Jim on the right there, and Pablo, who is a young Cuban artist trying to get into their Cuban art school. And not only is he much taller, but he has much more hair than I do. And I just love that picture, the size difference. And I like to say, you can see I was only a small part of this mission. And here's one of our older artists, and he did a painting. Let me explain, we did a project about marbleizing paper, which is an Italian technique where you actually add a gelatin-like substance to water and then put paint that floats on top of the water. You can make designs in the paint, put the paper in, and it comes out with a beautiful image. I think we might have a picture of that later. It was one of those things that my wife, Bess, who designed these projects, I thought, are you sure we want to do that? And she said yes. And it's a beautiful project because it is always successful. Even when it's not successful, it's successful. And then we did a watercolor project, and this was his watercolor project. He was a long-time pilot, and he did, as you can see, it's about climate change, which was a great concern to him and many of the Cubans. At being a Caribbean island, they face the consequences of climate change every day. And here's some of the older folks. This is Raul Suarez's granddaughter, who is also an art student, and she came to help out. There's another one of our folks, and the beginnings of one of her paintings as his. And the people just, there was no sense of failure with any of this. And in fact, on our second day that we were working with them, it was decided that everybody would introduce themselves and say something about themselves. The people were overjoyed to share, things about their life. And she is Elizabeth, who was a long-time dancer, and she is the teacher of the psycho ballet. Oh, and here's Pablo showing us, my wife Bess and me, showing some of his artwork. And his artwork, he did on the back of flattened boxes. He's trying to get into the art school, and because there were so few materials, you use what you have. You can make your own charcoal, and you can flatten a box. We brought, everybody brought art supplies in their suitcases. We brought 3 suitcases completely filled with art supplies. And it's an interesting thing to go into a foreign country with 3 suitcases filled with art supplies. Expect to be stopped. Expect to have to explain what it is, what you're doing with it. But anyway, we got through, and all of our art supplies were contributed to the people. Everybody who attended class got watercolors and papers, and we gave our art students a little extra. And here we are. It was overwhelming how much they enjoyed this class. And there's Betsy, Jim's other half there, and some of our other members, Elma. And just once again, we're talking to some of the younger people this time. Oh, and this is one of the Marbleizing Papers. It's a no-fail project. And there's some of our younger members, and Sandor. Sandor, who kept trying time after time after time to get a smiley face. And it may not be the best technique for doing smiley faces, but he continued until he got it. And there's one of his very precious daughters and her watercolor paintings. And there we are again. You can see as the paper comes up. And all of the tubs here we gave to the kitchen. Everything that we brought, they were happy to take. And there we are. These are some of our older students, and they, on the Sunday before we left, they did a little art exhibit. They were so happy with that. And this T-shirt I'm wearing is actually from here, Mural Leando, which was a project. It had been a neighborhood that in the center of it was a block that had for years been used as a dump. And a group of artists got together and said, hey, if we clean that up, can we do an art project there? And this is some of the result of their art project. Jim, did you want to speak it?
I would just add something. I don't know if you're talking about repurposing.
Oh, no.
Cubans are the kings of repurposing.
Right.
They repurpose everything because they have no resources. So Joe mentioned you saw the tins that we put the gelatin in, we put the paint in. We gave the kitchen came out and we were just going to throw them away. They had painted stuff. They were going to clean them up and they're going to use them. Little cups of paint you maybe saw on one of the tables. We were just going to throw that out. They took them home. So they are the kings of repurposing. All the art at this exhibit, I think you're going to talk about something?
Yeah.
All the art at this exhibit is all repurposed materials from the junk pile. So, you'll see sculptures and everything, and you'll see they're made out of fan blades and auto parts and all kinds of things. And they're just very ingenious, and they have to be. There is no, they can't do anything without it. So just an interesting facet of their culture.
Yeah, and people get fascinated with the cars, that they're 50 or 60 years old. And you see in postcards the very pretty ones that are completely redone, but the streets are filled with, what there are these cars that are works of sustainability. Try to keep a car alive for 60 years without being able to purchase parts that you have to make those parts for. And you'll see some of that. Oh, here they are. And then some of the cars you don't recognize are actually Russian. And they are old too, and I would imagine they're even harder to keep on the road. But this is probably the neighborhood that we were staying in. And as you can see, I mean, it's a beautiful tropical neighborhood, but it is crumbling. And here's the Malecon, which is the, the famous place that you'll see if you ever see movies about Cuba, they always have that. And this is the seawall that runs along Havana. Here again, you can see the juxtaposition of people doing art when they can and the crumbling infrastructure of the city. And this was on our Sunday. We didn't expect to go there, but this is a graphic arts studio where the work that they are doing there is absolutely incredible. All of their presses are over 100 years old. Their lithography presses and everything, and here they're still accomplishing great art. In fact, I talked to the director and asked if they ever allow artists from other countries to come in. And they said they would welcome it. So I would hope that sometime in the next few years that I could go and do some work there. And here is one of the central parts of Old Havana, and that is the cathedral just beyond. And there, Jim and Betsy on the bus. We traveled around.
This was the end of a long day, let me just say.
Yeah. And we were in this ancient school bus that did not have shocks, so the further back you sat, the worse the ride was, because given what the roads were, with potholes and stuff, it could be a real challenge.
It was obviously a great school bus, because there was no room for my leg.
Let me just say to Jim, and I think I'll let Elma take over because we are approaching we picked weeds in an organic farm.
Thanks, Joe. I'm going to stop just a moment and give you a tiny little history lesson, 3 minutes or less, okay? After the revolution, the Cuban Revolution, their Cuban trade was tied with the Soviet Union. The American embargo, of course, eliminated trade with the U.S., and so USSR gladly stepped in, and basically the sugar monoculture, which had been before, continued. And Soviets were the partners in that. USSR and the Soviet bloc was the huge market for the sugar, the biggest market they had, and also the USSR and bloc members exported to Cuba fertilizers, pesticides, and fuel for farm equipment. Okay, 1991, the fall of the Soviet Union. America cheers. Cuba has to face some serious stuff. The Russian importation of sugar went to nothing. 1/2 of Cuba's sugar refineries closed. Supplies of fertilizer, pesticide, and petrol from the Russian Federation vanished. Government nationalized some sugar refineries that were owned by foreign companies such as Hershey. Okay? The Cuban economy tanked. The country entered what they called the special period, always spoken in quotation marks. Cuba lost 80% of international trade that they had. Without the money or fuel, Cuba could not import food. The country was on the verge of starvation. Our guide, Sandor, whom you saw the picture of earlier, he said that everyone of his age did not grow as tall as the previous decades worth of kids. They were stunted by the starvation, basically.
The U.S., of course, did not send any aid or lift an embargo to help. The special period led to a resolve by the Cuban people not to become as dependent on trade for food. So necessity prompted their green revolution. Okay, people wondered if they really needed chemicals to produce their food, and basically small-scale organic farms became the norm. Well, we'll show some pictures. Okay. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay, I'm pressing the wrong button.
There we are.
Okay, here's an organic farm we visited in Alomar. This is Isis. She calls herself the good Isis. Okay, and she's telling us about this. The farmers with their small farms used their grandparents' methods. They plowed with oxen, and definitely utilized that fertilizer, and began to do some of the same patterns that their grandparents learned. And then some of the research in organic farming leaks through, and they were highly ready to take part in this. So the food fed the families and was sold to local markets. Here we go, a plow going. Okay. The government got on board to support the initiatives for sustainable urban agriculture. So around the cities, the government encouraged farms to help produce food to feed the people in the cities. Okay. The goal was to work toward high yields on the farms accessible to urban centers. Okay. Most of the farms were smaller than 100 acres. Organic farms probably won't be able to solve all the food problems that Cuba has, but they're making a strong contribution to the economy and to the quality of life in Cuba. Let's just go on. This is our group thinning out big flats of carrots. Okay, and accepting a piece of sugar cane, and now writing on. Back to you, Joe.
Okay. I'll be quick with this. Oops, where's that? There we go. I'll just go back to here. This is actually, we went to and visited the Chinatown of Havana, and it has the very interesting consequence that there are no Chinese in the Chinatown. And when you go to the Chinese restaurants, they have very little relationship to Chinese food. But it's still China. In fact, a lot of the Chinese during the revolution and after the revolution moved to New York. So you can still find Cuban Chinese restaurants in New York. I used to eat in one called Victoria China that was, black beans and egg foo young. A great combination. And there again, you can see people living in the city. This is right in the heart of Havana. You can see the condition of the buildings and the laundry hanging on the lines. There again, here's this is not a derelict building. This is a building still in use. And I believe that's one of the Russian cars. They look like shoe boxes on wheels. Oh, and there's my wife Bess and one of our wonderful artists. And Tim?
I want to make sure we have time for questions, but we did visit. We were a church group, and we did visit several churches. Two of them were Pentecostal churches. One was a Presbyterian church, and the other the Baptist. And what we found out is that the restrictions against religion imposed during the Castro regime are being lessened. And the government is discovering that churches can do good work. So they're letting them do some of the good work that they had previously not been able to do. We found the people within the churches to be enthusiastic, happy, joyful in their faith, and not discouraged. In fact, when I came back, I wrote about them giving us hope. Joe, you need to give me hope and move this clicker for me, Bob. Somebody.
Just use the right side clicker.
I'm
Right side.
stand back. Okay.
Just press this button. Keep pressing this button. There you go.
And so we found that in the midst of these circumstances of great poverty and lack of consumer goods, when I say of poverty, I don't mean poverty of spirit. I don't mean that they didn't have great joy in spirit. I mean they don't have the material things that we have, but they have wonderful faith and belief that God is going to help them. And in one of the churches, we saw the wonderful arts and music that they are able to produce. And the churches that we saw are all very small. The pastor of one of them said, well, I said, you have problems with the government? He said, well, yeah, when we want to expand the church, they make it very difficult for us to get a new building or more room. And so these are, that's the size of the church.
So instead, they make more churches.
But they make more churches when the government won't let them expand on what they have. Joe, you come back and finish up, and then we're going to have questions.
Okay.
This was one of the young people singing to his lungs, and one of our we had 3 young people from our church here that, and that's is a picture of her holding one of the young people.
Oh, and we'll just do this very quickly. This is we stayed overnight in Veradero, which is on the beach. And it is one of the more resort towns. And this is an incredibly long and very high bridge that, given Cuban infrastructure, one, it's good to have faith when you cross that bridge. But there's always libation. There's some of our group. Actually, Michelle in black, her parents are both Cuban immigrants, and they have very different views of Cuba. And this is our great translator with Olivia, who's one of our members, and he was a university professor for 27 years. And Adelso, not only did he speak English beautifully, he, like ISIS, the good ISIS, it's like all these Cubans are stand-up comedians. It's amazing. They are fun, funny people. They're more of us enjoying, and there's Sandor with Olivia. And Sandor has become our great friend. And the interesting thing is, you can't telephone, you can't email, but Facebook. Go figure. Facebook, we can talk to Sandor through Facebook. This is the Presbyterian church we stayed in Veradero. And there we are. Some of us, those of us who could swim, checking the bottom, seeing how deep it was. And a soccer game on the beach. And that's it.
Before I turn it back to Lauren, what questions do you have? We'll just field them. Yes.
I'm just curious why, since they've always been an adversary, there's certainly no reason for it anymore, but why are the people so friendly toward us?
Joe, you want to take that?
I think a lot of them have, they have relations in the United States. In fact, on our first trip talking to Sandor, he said, and it was very poignant, he said, we never know when a friend or a relative might leave, and we may never see them again. They want to have this relationship. We used to be their biggest trade partner. And a lot of that was unfortunate for the Cuban people because under the Batista regime, you had the mafia, you had, if you ever see Godfather 2, it explains it all. So there was this corruption, but they had this incredible relationship with the United States, and they would like to see it reinstituted.
They love the United States, even though our blockade or our embargo is really hurting them very badly. Yes.
Did Sandor, two questions, did Sandor get, not Sandor, Pablo, get into art school?
We don't know yet.
Oh, okay. And the other one is, what was it like to be there when Castro died?
Oh, when Castro died, it was really interesting. We were going to meet with Raul Suarez again, who actually had started out because he could not, he was part of the legislature, but a non-voting part, even though he'd been voted in by his neighborhood. But he was not a Communist Party member, so he could not vote. You had to be a party member. And firstly, it was a very contentious relationship. But over the years, he and Castro got closer. So we were going to see him, because Castro died, it was either, I guess it was the Friday, and we were leaving the Saturday evening. And he was just too bereft to meet with us. So there was, we realized that for most of the Cubans we were around, their entire lives had been under the Castro regime. It was all they knew. So there was, it was unlike the streets of Little Havana and Miami. There was no dancing in the street. There was a real sense of mourning.
As somebody said to me, when you talk about Cuba, it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Any more questions? Yes.
Is there a real divide in socioeconomic status? Are there people in very wealthy areas? Because there's probably some flow of funds.
Joe, you take that one.
Well, it's interesting that under Raul Castro, they finally kind of, you know, in quotes again, legalized the black market. Because the average wage for people, and this is, you know, whether you're cleaning the streets or you're a doctor, was $20 a month. That's what, you know, the average. You're guaranteed a job, you're guaranteed housing. They have one of the best educational systems in the world, because Castro really believed in literacy. And you have really great health care, except they don't have enough nurses and stuff. So they said that if you're in the hospital for an extended stay, you need to have family and friends come in and clean the hospital room and do things like that. But, so there isn't a huge divide. Now you could see there is some divide, it's just one of the things that was interesting after the first time we were there. It was right after the election of the current occupant of the White House. And there was a fear that things would change too much. Because it being someone who was involved in the resort business and the hotel business, that it would grow Cuba too quickly. But they were looking forward to having some more prosperity. But there isn't, nobody has any money there. Except I did come back with $3 pesos.
And you can't buy a new car in Cuba, by the way. They're just not available. That's why they use these classic ones. Are you going to call the time?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm consistent, at least. Thank you, Tim, and thank you guys for being here today. Appreciate you guys sharing your journey and visit to Cuba. Obviously, a lot of good people living down there, and a lot of good things that I shared with them. That's one of the bucket list items for Morgan and I to get down there. Just in closing, a couple final announcements. I do want to thank you guys for being here, and in recognition, we'll make a gift to the community kitchen here in town. So thank you guys again for being here. Next week we'll have Susan, Georgia, and Russ Fry from Upstart, the School of Public Health in Stone Belt. So Leslie has been integral in getting them here. We have our quote for the week, or thought for the week. I thought it was appropriate for multiple reasons, but this is: the next time I cry about golf, it will only be with joy. It's not worth crying over golf for any other reason. After all, it's only a game. And that conveniently came from Rory McIlroy before he won the Players' Championship this year on Sunday, which Rory is Irish, and Sunday was also St. Patrick's Day. So stars were aligned. He was going to win the Players' Championship in golf. But the next time I cry about golf, it will only be with joy, which hopefully he did on Sunday. It's not worth crying over golf for any other reason. After all, it's only a game. Obviously, that's applicable to multiple facets of our life. So thank you all, and please join me and rise and recite the four-way test plus one of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun? Have a great afternoon. Go Hoosiers!